Feel the point on the spine that the crossed arms are pushing into, and feel the upper heart lifting as a consequence. This really improves the posture. Our mind, even when it's relatively quiet, is like a lid on top of the heart, preventing the heart from lifting upwards. Pulling the chin in, as though you're trying to get your head out of the way, pull it back so that the heart can just point upwards with nothing getting in the way. The Chinese character for qi is a cooking pot of rice with vapor evaporating upwards. It's my conviction that we all secretly yearn for inner peace. Everyone is plagued by a noisy mind. And we have to realize that that peace is a lack of noise. It's a negative, like the void or emptiness in Oriental philosophy. So they say, if you want inner peace, you have to learn to say no. No to temptation and distraction. And it's difficult because if ever you encounter that inner peace, it's terrifying. Because there's a sense that you have been obliterated. And then just bringing the arms round into prayer. And we want this to do the same sort of thing. Just having a little bit of pressure between the hands squeezes my fingers, especially my middle fingers, upwards and lifts the heart. And I have to remember just to pull the chin in so that this isn't making me look upwards. Let's look at our modes of movement. So the one we normally work on and concentrate on, the one that we're not used to, is the pulling. So I feel this movement to my right as my foot that's stuck on the ground, attached to the ground, and the leg contracting in order to pull me. Like a tentacle. Imagine the octopus reaching out for something, clasping it, and then bringing it in. This is why we liken this mood, this way of moving, to feeding. My leg is reaching, and then it contracts and pulls me into it. And this is how we walk. The empty leg extends forwards, settles on the ground, and draws me into it. So when we move like this, it keeps us low. It drags us down into the foot, and it also stretches across here, which is a feeling we want, because this is normally so compressed with gravity and the ground and our own actions. So I pull with this foot. Now, what I have to be careful of is that I don't cheat and actually push with this foot. So when I start pulling with this foot, there's a feeling that I don't really want to move. I want to stay here. So it really has to pull before I start moving. So I bend the leg and eventually I start moving. So we have to feel our inertia. If you want to get into energy, then you need to really feel the inertia, the reluctance of the body to move. I pull and I move. What we want to feel is what happens in between the pull, which that pull is like an act of spirit. It's like plucking the apple off the tree. I reach and there's a little tug, and then the apple is free, and then I can bring it down towards my mouth. So there's a tug in the foot here, but there's a delay between that tug and my body slowly following. I want to feel what happens in that gap. That is where energy is. So when I tug, it's like something is pulled out of me, like a stream is sucked out of me towards that foot. And then my body flows along with it. It's like a current, a flow. So I tug and that starts the flow and my body goes with it. I have to really hold back with the body until I feel the flow, because I want the body to follow the energy. So there's a sense that rather than it being a body that's moving, it's a body that is following movement. It's like a still body that goes with this movement. The movement is there before the body starts actually moving from its position. So I pull, and then I feel this draw, this energy, and slowly my body goes with it. This is how we get into energy. So I have to become quite quiet inside and really attentive in order to feel this. If I'm thinking about something else, or I'm grumbling to myself, which is what the ego loves to do, then I'll miss it. I won't feel it. I'll know this is the problem. I will know that it should be there. And so I can make myself behave as though I am feeling it, but it's a lie. This is a sense in which we are lying all the time. Just allow the knee to move. Remember, if I want to yank at this foot, it's my knee going forwards that gets that. You can think of the knee going forwards. You can think of the heel coming up. So I tug. There's a little tug with the leg, and slowly I am dragged along. For me, this is the best way to get into energy and to start feeling spirit. It's like an explosion here, ping, and that starts the energy moving towards it, and then the body goes with it. So the energy is a little bit sluggish. It needs a kickstart, but not as sluggish as the body. The body is even more sluggish. So I spark in my foot by bringing my knee up a little bit and my heel up, and that starts the energy moving into it, and slowly my body follows that. And we want to feel, how do I generate that spark of spirit? Something inside me has to open up. It's like my eyes expand open, my fingers expand open, my heart opens. So there's something happens. It has to be real. It's like an emotional thing rather than just a mechanical, physical thing. Something in me here really sparks, and then everything gets sucked towards that. So adults tend not to be very good at spirit, whereas children are great. Imagine a child here that really ham it up, that really go to town. riding a horse. I could never understand, when we sort of worked with John, and then when we started showing spirit and to relative beginners, I could never understand why the beginners were better than me. When you begin at something, there's something in you that's just naturally a little bit excited. As long as you're not intimidated, you're excited by the freshness and the newness. And so you have a real head start. This is what they call beginner's luck and beginner's mind. This ability to come into something fresh as though for the first time, that is the correct sort of heart. Like the heart of anticipation, the heart that's just really ready and so hungry for this novelty that it impels the novelty, compels the novelty to actually expose itself. And this is what, in a way, it just makes it difficult for people, because when people study something, they want this sense that they're getting better. So they know more than they did last year. Their skills are better than they were last year. Whereas really, all of this, it's about coming back to an emptiness that precedes knowledge and precedes expertise. It's something that we just can naturally do extremely well if only we stop thinking and stop worrying. I had a student, she was a bit older than me, and a friend of hers had told her about me. So she was curious. And so she came for a lesson. And it's like she had an epiphany. She was a ballet teacher, and she was just saying, wow, this is the opposite of ballet, but so much better. And she really opened up to it and felt it all, felt the energy, felt the spirit. But of course, after that, it never happened again for her, because instead of coming to the classes empty and fresh, she came expecting something. That mind that's wanting. I want an experience like the one I had in the first lesson. That's never going to happen. So eventually, after 3 years, she gave up. And now let's try moving again, but now from the full leg. So if we think of the empty extended leg as being like a strip of elastic that's been stretched, that when it's released, it pulls back into itself. So it shortens. That's the one we've just been doing. The straightened leg starts to contract naturally. Now we want to feel the filling leg, the leg that becomes so compressed that it has to lengthen. And that's like a spring. So if you imagine a spring coiled up from the ground, and you put your hand on it and you press down into it, so the spring will get shorter and your hand will get closer to the ground, but it will get more and more difficult because the spring is pushing back. So what we want to try and feel is the return of the spring as it's being compressed. And that's the leg, that's the compressing leg. So I come into this leg like I'm coming into a spring. The leg is bending, but it doesn't want to bend too much, otherwise it will buckle and I'll fall. So I sink into the leg and it's bending. Now, what I want to feel is the leg pushing back, like the spring pushing back. So I sink into the leg, but the leg is returning the energy. So there's something flowing up, and then I follow that. So it's the same principle. I'm using the leg to generate some energy, which my body almost reluctantly follows. So I'm sinking into the leg. The leg is pumping up into me, even though I'm not letting my body move. And I eventually allow my body to follow that energy. I'm sinking into the leg, it's returning, and I go with it. So it's the opposite of mechanical motion. Sinking into the spring is pushing back. I feel that push as a stream of energy, which my body follows. I sink into the foot, way, something's flowing out, and my body goes with it. So when the body is stretched, it behaves like elastic, and when the body is compressed, it behaves like a spring. So I sink into the springy leg. That sends energy through me, pushing my body. And the last thing that happens is the leg straightening. This is what I want to feel. It's not a recoil. I'm not sinking into the leg and then the leg recoils back. It's the leg returning energy, which then takes the body and finally takes the leg. So I sink into the leg. It's as I'm sinking into the leg that the energy starts coming up in this direction. It's not as I start returning with the body. I have to feel the energy before I allow the movement. So I sink into the foot, and that is sending this plume through me, and I follow. I sink into the foot. And if you don't feel the energy, then just imagine it. You can imagine something just coming up. Imagination becomes reality. Fake it until you make it. So my body is still moving in this direction. As the energy starts coming in the opposite direction, then eventually my body thinks, okay, I'll go with it. So the energy is very optimistic. It's like it's bright and cheerful and playful. But the body is a little bit cynical. The body sort of wants to stay where it is. It's a bit of a grump. But eventually it just gets taken along. It says, oh, okay, I'll go with it. Sinking into the leg is returning this energy, and I go with it. Just bring it back to riding horse. Feel this center. Dan Chen, Ming Men. When you get it right and you get tone into this area, they really draw towards each other. Almost like it's just the one point, front and back of the same thing. Now let's just try doing that breathing from here. So pulling the belly in and then tightening around the min meng to pull your head back and your tail under. Pulling in the belly. And pulling in the Ming Men. Trying to get as much flexibility into my lower back, my lumbar spine as possible. Try and keep your mind in this point, because it's the part of the spine above here. It's where the thoracic spine and the lumbar spine tend to join up. That's where we'll tend to get most curvature, which is fine. But I want to feel as though where my fists are, that's the center of the curvature. That's where I'm trying to curve the most. And then back to riding horse. And then the fourfold, starting with the sky and the earth. So let's go straight into that exercise of taking the earth up and bringing the heavens down. So I reach down. I imagine my fingers dipping into the ground, pulling up a handful of earth, which I pack into my belly. And then I continue the hands going up, reach out and up, and bring a handful of sky down and pack it into the heart. And then my hands continue down, separate as though going down the legs, scooping underneath each foot, bringing the earth up into the belly, and then up, separating pretty much as you reach the heart, reaching up with the arms, and then pulling some sky down into the heart, down to the belly, separate across the sacrum, down the legs. So each arm is tracing a figure of 8. Both of these are difficult, but the one that's physically difficult, of course, is the one that goes down, because we don't really like bending our legs too much. And also, we don't really want to get down to earth. We don't want to get our hands dirty, basically. A beautiful exercise, this, because the two really complement each other. If we were just going down all the time, then the legs would just get a lot more tired. So as I come up and reach for the sky, it sort of gives my legs a bit of a rest, but it's the emotional shift from bending down and getting my heart facing the ground, now to really open out and lift my heart upwards. Feel the heart. So here, as I reach upwards, it's like these tentacles come out of my heart and reach upwards. My arms are just images of the tentacles of my heart. And then those tentacles contract as the hands start coming in and down. And now here, as I go down, the tentacles are reaching down into the ground from my heart. And then I just retract them and bring the hands up. Feel the emotional shift between extending your tentacles and retracting them. When you extend your tentacles, you need to be quite positive and hopeful. And when you retract them, there's a sense of deflation, there's a sense of sadness almost. Heart is opening. Heart is sucking back in. I'm yielding. I'm drawing my tentacles in. And then here, the heart has to open again. It's like I have to get quite fierce to go down so low because it's quite painful. And then I suck in again. And then just back into the riding horse. So for me, that exercise, it really does bring a tingle. It really opens us to the space we're in. And feel the legs. Now it's like both of my legs are behaving like springs now, like they were when we were moving from side to side. So gravity, my own heaviness, is pulling me down towards the ground. And that's loading the springs of the legs. And if I can just open up, just allow it, just become a little bit cheerful in my heart, then I feel that as a rising coming up through me, the same as I felt the flow of energy from my compressing leg, dragging my body up. This is what we want to feel. When we're standing, we're in equilibrium. Gravity is pulling me down, but the spring of my legs is driving me up. And those two are in equilibrium. And feel this point, this compact region directly beneath the heart. So my heart should feel like a bowl of soup or something that's looking upwards like this. So normally we sort of pull our head over a little bit so that our bowl faces forwards. Then it's a bit like a satellite dish that's sort of collecting information. But here, when we're in riding horse, there's a sense that this is opening up to the sky. In the same way that I can feel my danchen being like an upside down bowl that is opening up to the ground, to the earth. So I don't want this shape in the arms to pull, to make the thoracic spine even more curved. When I'm standing like this, I've got a real sense that my heart is looking up. So I'm sandwiched between the sky and the earth. I allow my legs to become springy so that I can feel gravity pumping energy up from the earth into me. and I'm conscious of my breathing, and that is the pump that's drawing the sky into me and then sending it back out again. So the atmosphere is coming in and out. So the two main forces of nature that we are under all the time is gravity and atmospheric pressure. The earth is pulling me down. The atmosphere is trying to crush me. So just imagine the sort of internal pressure that we have to just to balance that external pressure that's pushing into me. And then we want to find a way of working on the other two aspects of the fourfold. The divinities, or it's interesting that, Heidegger, he trained in a seminary. He was going to be a priest to start with, then he got disillusioned with religion and went and did philosophy. But, his famous book, Being and Time, for him being is very much God. And so he's very religious, Heidegger. But it's interesting that he chose the word divinities rather than God. Because the problem with God, the monotheic God, the one God, in a sense, it's only ever really a theory. It's an idea. It's a nice idea that there's just one governing everything. But very, very few people actually really experience it and feel it. Whereas the divinities, this sense that everything is a little bit alive, we all feel that, especially if your spirit comes up. So Heidegger called it the divinities. John called it the guardian, which is very much a feeling that there's something much larger than you behind you that's looking out for you. The guardian angel prayer, angel of God, my guardian dear, to whom God's love commits me here. It's the first prayer that we learned as children. And so just a sense that there's an aspect of yourself that's sort of misty and we lose it. So Castaneda called it the unknowable. Freud called it the unconscious. So there's this sense that there's like a depth that we cannot map and difficult to even go into it, but it's there. And what we want to do is just relax sufficiently so that that can bleed in and out of us a little bit. And riding horse is the perfect posture for working on that, because we're using the arms to define this small space in front of me. This is me. This is my humanness, if you like. My cultured being is here inside this space. And everything outside of that is the unconscious. It's inhabited by spirit. It's inhabited by these divinities, these sprites and wraiths, ghosts, haunted. So the Chinese talk about the ancestors, and most primitive traditions do. So a real sense that when you're standing here and you're confronting another person, that other person is like at this point here. So my attention is converging onto this person I'm communicating with. But there's another sense that another aspect of my attention, my dark attention, is diverging and opening up to this mass behind me. So a sense that all of these things are coming through me, my past, my tradition, my culture, my ancestors, they're all there behind us. And now, just as a very sort of rudimentary means of sort of dipping into that a little bit, let's just do the one where we open up to the sides. So turning and opening up. So feel the arm that's extending behind you. And then let it close as you come back to the front. So don't look behind yourself, but there's a sense that your arm that's going behind you is reaching into this sort of darkness and coming out with something. It hooks onto something and brings it out of the darkness. I'm fishing. Such a strong image, the image of fishing, especially for us that have brought up Christians. So even though I've turned, there's still a sense that this is behind me. I'm reaching into that darkness. And even without trying, I'm bringing something back out. I'm reaching behind, bringing something in front and letting it pack in to my heart. I was teaching this fourfold to a student, and she's pretty bright, and she was really excited by it because she could just feel the truth of it. But what she said was very interesting. She just said, but we no longer have the fourfold. Is all we have now is culture. So human culture has just obliterated everything. We just have this sort of amorphous mass of culture. So what we're trying to do is just partition a little bit of time to ourselves to do our own work and wake up the past, wake up these aspects of our tradition, our Celtic heritage. Before Christianity and civilization shat all over it. I'm extending and I'm drawing in. So as I draw in, the only thing I'm drawing in is my knowingness or my desire to know. I'm drawing that in, and then everything just becomes this negativity in a sense, this darkness. I become shrouded in this darkness. I've just become this little pinprick inside the void. I'm now covered. It's like those Carthusian monks, they'd be sitting down doing their studying and then decide, okay, it's time to pray, and just pull the hood up over the head and just go down into a huddle and just disappear. And yet they become everything. The self retreats into nothingness, and then everything else opens out and up and surrounds them and swirls around them. I huddle, I curl up around this retreating self. I lock it in. And my awareness softens and shifts into my back and extends and emanates out of me. And now just back to riding horse. And now feel it. It's a real sense that your spine has reached under and over to embrace this space as much as your arms, and that your back is really squeezing out and around, like you have these two big wings that are just coming away from your back and beginning to unfurl. Unfurling into ever greater openness. That's what that means, really. Growth, not in the sense of getting bigger or getting stronger or getting more, but in the sense of getting more open. The more open you become, the less you are, because the openness smothers you, almost suffocates you. This is why people find it so difficult. And let's bring it up. And getting this going. So the important thing on this one is that we're not pushing the sacrum up all the time. I'm really letting this settle down and come forwards. It just takes a lot of practice to get to that stage. So when you practice, it's important to have a sense of where it's going. There's something you're practicing because you want to get it better. So you have an image, a gentle image of how it should be. But the fact that it isn't there yet shouldn't get you down. And it shouldn't prevent you from practicing. So this is an exercise to generate joy. Joy is the buoyancy that lifts the heart. So we're so used to thinking of happiness as being something that is a consequence of good fortune. So if I find the right partner, or I get a promotion at work, or I win the lottery, then I shall be happy. But really, it's the other way around. If you can generate your own happiness, then good fortune will come to you. Otherwise, we're just holding the world to ransom all the time. You know, give me what I want, otherwise I'm going to be miserable. And joy is, it's really, you know, joy and happiness, that it's really just like an ebullient generosity, really. It's just a bubbling, a boiling, you're sort of boiling over, brimming over with positivity, the right sort of positivity. The first thing that, you know, we have to do to get into this sort of work is to accept discipline. So negative capability, the ability to say no, that's what we have to learn. So when there's distractions and temptations that come along, we can just say, no, thanks. I'd rather do my practice. So it all starts with that. Without that, there's no practice, there's no study, there's no student. And then just let it come back, settle. But there's this figure of 8 going on all the time. You know, your body is just full of them. It's like an infection.